And you notice again, Donovan Mitchell, 8 of 24 from the floor. We talked about it. But, look, he carried such a load. Look at the game that they won in this series. That's the thing that gets forgotten. The game in this series that they ended up winning, it wasn't Mitchell. It was Ingles with a career high, regular or postseason. It was Exum, who really came out of nowhere seemingly and had a huge game, including a big dunk. He hasn't been able to have a big game in the series, and you hate to circle back, but you heard Quinn Snyder talk about it. That loss of Ricky Rubio, it's a much different series. You don't want to take any credit away from Houston, but this is a way different-looking game-by-game series of Rubio's on the floor.
Yeah, we always try to remind people there's a reason why certain guys start, a reason why certain guys come off the bench. Yes, when someone gets injury, has an injury, every player says next man up.
Sure.
But now you're at the end of the season, certain guys aren't prepared for this part of the season. So when you bring in Neto, you bring in, Exum, those guys are solid backups. But now you're asking them, Zeke, to go out there and be a starter and stop a starter on the fly. Sometimes you can do it as a committee, but one-on-one is hard to do.
Yeah, and guys like Rubio and I'll even include Rondo in that. These are the throwback intelligent guys who understand how to win a basketball game without taking a shot. And they understand the 2 T's. That's tempo and temperament. And their temperament for the game and the ability to control the tempo of the game and to facilitate, they can win the basketball game and have their fingerprints all over the stat sheet except the scoring column. So Rubio can win you the basketball game like Rondo did the other night by scoring 4 points, but yet having, 16 or 18 assists, and that's what they missed.
We showed Capella. We were talking about it during the break, but while we have a minute before the players come out, let's talk about it because we don't give him enough credit. He's outplayed Gobert in this series. I mean, Rudy was in the negative 27 when he was on the floor, and that's not necessarily Rudy. That's Capella and what he was doing on the other side. The importance that he has and how imperative he really is for the Rockets, I don't think people realize from the outside when they see the MVP performance of Harden.
6 huge blocks tonight, covering a few of those games this year's for players only, talking to the coaching staff and talking to John Lucas. He's in their practice at 6 a.m. working on his game, then doing the normal practice, then staying afterward. So now with the alley-oop, that's like clockwork. Now he catches the ball at the free throw line, 1 or 2 dribbles, makes that extra pass because now the team has confidence in him to put him in those situations knowing he's going to make great plays. And last but not least, he's making his free throws. Yeah. So now you can't foul him late game situations, no hack Capella because now he's making his free throws. Now you cannot use that tactic here in the playoffs.
I'm going to go to Morway in terms of, doing that draft. I think he was the 19th or 21st pick or something like that in that draft. When his name was called from Switzerland, right? And everyone was like, who is this guy, right? So you talk about Morway drafting for his system, understanding what his system is going to be, the type of players he's going to get, the type of center he wanted, someone who can run, and then having the ability to look at Capella and say, this guy is going to develop into X. And he's the perfect center, perfect for their system. Someplace else he may not fit, but for the Houston Rockets and the way they play, and you look at D'Antoni's system, Morway found the perfect coach for his system, right? The perfect center, and then he adds Paul and Harden, and now it all works. So, and this is where you have management, coach, players.
Same page.
Everybody's on the same page.
Yep. And look, 25th overall pick in 2014. I'm pretty sure we're not going to list 24 players that were better than him in that draft.
Can I just echo that one more time?
No, you're not allowed.
When we have those, I can't even say it. When we have those meetings with the coach before the game, and we had the Rockets a few times, Coach, why is your system working? He said, because from the top, from my owner to my GM to me to assistant coaches, to how we scout, everything is played this way. Chris Paul, he understands he's taking more threes, but they allow the few wrinkles because he's so good in the mid-range. So when you have everyone on the same page, you have a better chance to be successful throughout the season and carry over to the playoffs.
We talk about coaching, and I think the job that Quinn has done with this team, the culture that he's presented, done a fantastic. For my coach at the end here, one thing that's fascinating, and I think Nate's done a great job with Indiana as well. Paul George leaves. Indiana was a better team. We had Oladipo here in the office today. Gordon Hayward leaves. The Jazz are a better team than they were a year ago. It's a heck of a coaching job this year from Quinn Snyder.
Yeah, and it goes back to me, they're coaching trees, right? So you got Quinn and you got, Coach K, and then you look at Nate McMillan and you go all the way back to George Karl and Kloppenberg in terms of what they instilled into Nate McMillan from a defensive standpoint, and how you take the underdogs and you really make a team, right? And what Quinn has done with this team, and I remember seeing him here in Atlanta. We were at the hotel together, and we were talking about Mitchell. And he wasn't talking about playing the Atlanta Hawks, right? Quinn was asking me about how do I get Mitchell to think like a Steph Curry or to think like a Kevin Durant, because we're going to be playing those guys in the playoffs. And the discussion that we were having was, okay, instead of playing against the Atlanta Hawks, and they ended up losing that game, you got to think every night that you're playing against the Golden State Warriors, because they're the #1 team out there. And then it became Houston. So every time you step out on the floor, you are preparing yourself to play against those two teams, because those are the best teams, regardless of the opponent that you're playing. And Utah, I think, took that and ran with it, and Snyder has done a great job in terms of keeping that team together, not only keeping that team together, but making them believe. Not only did he make the team believe, he made the city believe, the franchise believe, and he and Dennis Lindsay are on the same page as coaches and players.
They've done a nice job with guys like Jingles and some of these other, even O'Neal, these players. Jay Crowder was a nice ad, didn't have a big game, 1 of 11 from the floor. Here he is after the loss.
Just to get offense generated, a lot of offense generating to go our way. When we went on runs when we did, the few times that we did, but couldn't sustain it.
How did you guys feel you did with the intensity of this one tonight?
I mean, we matched the intensity, but we didn't play smart the whole game. But we did fight. We did match their level a little bit. And, a couple other things didn't go our way, but I think we matched their intensity level.
Coach mentioned the shots missed at the rim. Was there any particular reason for that, or was they just not following?
It's just one fault.
Defensively, you guys, you held them to, 42%, just 100 points. You got to be pretty happy with that effort, I guess.
I think we was focused on that a lot, obviously. With the first quarter they had against us game, 3. But, chalk it up, let it go. Got a quick turnaround here, and go get a win if they're on our home court.
What was the message post-game as you get ready to go back to Houston?
Well, obviously, we'll watch the film tomorrow, but it's do or die right now. I'm sure the energy level will be there. We just got to bring our head and focus in on both ends of the court and play together.
You guys have been going really hard for a long time.
All right, there's Jay Crowder. He's done a hell of a job with this team. He started tonight 1 of 11 from the floor. The matchup problem that Houston creates when he kind of, I don't want to say renders Rudy Gobert in that size useless, but it almost kind of takes away the best thing, right, that they have with him in Favors, which they used, I thought, so perfectly in that first round. So you take Favors out. Now he plays 15 minutes. You put Crowder in. It just hasn't worked.
Well, I'm going to go to the coach over with that one. When you're playing that chess match, do you go to your big guy like a Favors and say, hey, I need you to kind of think outside the box and hover around the three-point line? Because to your point, your whole life you made your money in the paint. Yeah. But because the Rockets have 4 out and
right,
1
no one's in the
in,
paint,
or the pick and roll down the basket, there's nobody there, and you're asking Gobert to show on the pick and roll and get back to protect, but that 4-man's in the corner. Did it throw Crowder out of whack a little bit because he's 1 of 11 tonight? Didn't kind of seem himself because he had been in his role all season long coming off the bench.
Yeah, it does. And this is when the coach and also players, we game plan against your historical training, right? So you've been trained as a big man to stay in the lane. And eventually, right, you're going to lose focus or concentration on what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And then you're going to fall back into your old habits, your old self. And you always are playing the game against yourself. And I think that's what D'Antoni always does by playing 4 smalls out on the floor and using a 3-point line and only playing 1 big. because teams that try to play two bigs, one of those bigs are always going to fall back into their old habits. And when you fall back into those old habits 2 or 3 times, right, you mess up, guess what? You're down 6 or you're down 9 points because they're knocking down those things.
You talk about Jay Crowder, kind of, I think of him as like a glue guy. They've done a nice job with that with the Rockets. P.J. Tucker had another nice game at 11.7 rebounds. Only took 6 shots. He's not there for that. But it doesn't seem, Zeke, to ever kind of go out of his – you talk about kind of getting out of your game. Yeah. You want to talk about a guy who knows his role? This is a guy who is in the same lane every single night, knows his role.
You know, the guys who are very successful in the NBA – they know their role. They know who they are and what they can and what they can't do. And the coach will only play the people that he trusts, not the people who think that they can do everything. So the guys that know what they can and can't do, Clint Capella, right?
Yep.
Those are the guys that we can game plan with. But the guys who say, Coach, I can do A, B, C, D, and E, those guys you have a hard time with. But the people who say, Coach, I can just do D, we figure out a way how to use that D.
All right, we come back.